Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
Do you like organic fair trade coffee? Do you appreciate a well-made pour-over, but just don't have time for all the rigmarole of setup, cleanup, and brew time? Reach for Mount Hagen Coffee. When you want that artisanal flavor, but don't have time for all the bullshit. Mount Hagen Coffee, brought to you by Airey Bros Radio.
Whether on top of a 14er or the Airey Bros need a pick-me-up after the daily challenge, Airey Bros reach for Honey Bunches. Honey Bunches, the peanut pecan honey bar with over 42% of pure honey in each and every bar. Honey Bunches is gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free. Honey Bunches is family-owned and operated here in the great state of Colorado since 2013. Go to honeybunches.com and use the promo code ABR1512 for a 10% discount on the boys of 1512. Once again, that is promo code ABR1512 at honeybunches.com.
Cheers. Called Gunner's Ditch. I named it after a place right here, right in the river. A lot of our beers are river or shore themed. So Gunner's Ditch is a place that you might know north of the Mataluking Bridge over there on the northern Barnegat. It's a dry IPA. It's kind of a brute style, but with an East Coast flair on it. It's just a fairly light beer for drinking. My son Ray, who you coached when he was a kid, he started homebrewing in college, and he actually got me into it. As a flagship, it probably would be we have a red and a blonde and a stout. The biggest surprise was that there's no big surprise. All grain brewing. And so then you have to actually extract that sweet wort from the grains themselves, which is you steep it, kind of like tea, at certain temperatures, and you get different effects from that, whether it's kind of thicker or less thick, whether you're going to extract different things based on the temperature. That will help you for the amount of alcohol and the kind of the mouthfeel and consistency, that kind of thing. Stout is like milk. I mean, you can drink it in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. It's just, yeah, most of our beers are in the 4, 5, 6 range. We always try to have one in the 9 or 10. I mean, an imperial version of something or a really strong beer, basically it's all about how much sugar goes in, because that's how much alcohol ends up coming out or being produced. Time and temperature are ingredients. So we call that grain to glass. This is Mike Frye from Frye Brewing, and you're listening to Airey Brothers Radio.
What's up, y'all? This is Airey Bros Radio, and this is episode 65 with Mike Frye of Frye Brewing. You ready, Prince?
You better believe it, Richie Rich. I am ready to give the fans of Airey Bros Radio some craft beer knowledge from the source over at Frye Brewing.
Yeah, Mike's a good friend. We've known each other for quite a few years. I had the opportunity to work with his children, coach them. And since then, Mike has gotten was into brewing and has taken that from the home scale to the craft beer scale and has now opened a brewery in our hometown of Point Pleasant.
Yeah, this is a very educational podcast. Even if you're not into beer like myself, there's a lot of science, a lot of ins and outs that go into running a craft brewing facility, and Mike dives in to all those ins and outs and gives us the tips and the tricks, maybe some of the setbacks that he initially got when he opened up his brewery, but how he kept it going, how he went and learned more from other people, from the source. And yeah, this is just a great podcast that you're going to need your pen and paper out if you're a craft brew nerd, because there's a lot of facts in this one, Richie Rich.
Yeah, we tried to get answers to all the questions we had. Anything that we've been thinking about craft beers in the past couple months since we've started up Jules 2.0, we've written down and we unloaded on Mike, and he was gracious with his time and answered all of our questions, all things craft beer related. So we were stoked to have him on. stoked to connect with him. And if you are in the greater Point Pleasant area, I would suggest that you head over to Frye Brewing and pick up some brews, show them some love, tell them the Airey Bros sent you.
Crack open a brewski, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Airey Bros Radio.
Much love, namaste from the boys of 1512. Well, appreciate you coming on with us. We've been shouting you out quite a bit on our other podcast, the craft beer / book club of the month type of podcast that we have going with our cousins, and it's through our love of craft beer and the unfortunate impact that COVID-19 has placed on us. One of the good things that we're grateful for is that it's allowed us to reconnect with some of our family members that are, you know how it goes. People get married, they have kids, and then it becomes very difficult for you to connect on things. And so my cousins and I have connected over beers over, say, the last year and a half. And when all this started going down, I said, hey, why don't we just have a happy hour? And then that turned into, why don't we record it and then see where that goes? And then the next thing you know, we're about 15 or 16 episodes deep. And the good times are rolling. So we've been having some tasty beers, and we wanted to get you on to kind of talk about craft beers and all that good stuff. And, when we first met, as far as I know, brewing beers on this scale was never something that, we had conversed about. So, I guess maybe kind of give us a little bit of background about, what got you from where you were when we knew each other, worked together, as to now where you're sitting by. I got this beautiful backdrop behind you of all these things that we're going to get into as well. So, and I'm going to grab a beer while you're talking.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. I kind of got a little head start. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you twisted my arm, so I'm gonna.
What are you sipping on there, Mike?
Oh, this is one that we got. It's called Gunner's Ditch. I named it after a place right here, right in the river. A lot of our beers are river or shore themed. So Gunner's Ditch is a place that you might know north of the Mantaloking Bridge over there on the northern Barnegat. It's a dry IPA. It's kind of a brute style, but with an East Coast flair on it. It's just a fairly light beer for drinking. I like it.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about what you guys got going on is when I see your post, I can always have some sort of point of reference just based on the names that you name a lot of the beverages. I see the Tyson Shoal one a lot, and that resonates with me. And so I love seeing all that stuff. I love following it.
Yep. Cheers. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, we've known each other for, 15, 18 years, something like that, whatever it was. And back then I was just a home brewer. It was in New Jersey. It was very hard to start a brewery back then. And excuse me, I think it was the class of 11 is what we call them, is Kane, Carton, and Cape May all started their breweries that year. And then just shortly after that, they changed the laws here in New Jersey so that you could actually sell beer from a tap room. Prior to that, companies like River Horse and Flying Fish, they were here, they were doing craft beer, but they couldn't sell from the tap room. So they had to have a full-scale production model just to open up. And of course, Anheuser-Busch is up in Newark. So, beer is not new here in New Jersey, and we're not new to it. But it really didn't take off here like it had in other places, since the 80s. And back when home brewing even itself was illegal early in the 80s, or I guess late in the 70s. So, but then they changed the laws here, mostly I think as a result of the Kane, Carton, and Cape May kind of opening up and lobbying for it, trying to generate some kind of additional interest here. There were, I want to say, 18 or 20 breweries in the state at the time, and meantime there was probably dozens of breweries in different cities all over the country, and probably close to 100 out in Portland, just in Portland area alone. as recently as 10 years ago, we still only had a few dozen here, or a dozen in New Jersey. When they changed the laws, when we were able to start selling beer from tap rooms, it really made the Main Street model available, which is kind of the model that we use. Some other breweries use kind of the industrial park model, which is you're off of the beaten path. You got a kind of an industrial or corporate kind of thing going on, so you can do a lot of shipping from there. And they set up a tap room there too, which works great. It's just what you're kind of comfortable with, what you want to work with. Rich, as you know, I only live a few blocks from here, so my idea was to open right here in town, where we kind of know everybody and everybody knows us. And so that's what kind of got us started. As the laws changed, it started really taking off. We were home brewing, and we're kind of looking towards the end of our regular careers. My wife and I we're both grandparents, as you also know, and so we're kind of looking to maybe kind of move into a transition, kind of slow down a little bit. So this was the idea.
And how long you been? How long had you been homebrewing for?
So my son Ray, who you coached when he was a kid, he started homebrewing in college, and he actually got me into it. Him and his friends were homebrewing at our house, and I kind of looked over and watched what they were doing. I said, "What are you guys doing over there? It looks like fun." So I mean, I just got the bug right away. I built a kegerator before I even brewed my first beer, and kind of because I didn't want to worry about that bottle conditioning thing and cleaning all the bottles and stuff. I just said, no, I'm going to force carb it, do it in a keg, and then we can kind of move on 5 gallons at a time. It escalated quickly, I want to say. We started brewing for all our parties, and we started doing like anytime there was a family celebration, wedding or something like that, we'd always bring lots of beers and kind of hone our skills. Me and him would brew together, and me and a couple other friends would. So yeah, I guess I want to say it was about 10 or 12 years we were home brewing before we opened up.
Okay. And is Ray involved with you over there? Is he helping out now?
No, ironically enough, so he's too busy with his day job, and he's got 2 kids and another on the way.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah. So yeah, he's been here and he helps out every once in a while, but no, he's not involved in the business really.
Okay. And when you were home brewing, what was your go-to? What was your favorite? What was the recipe that kind of, I guess, is the flagship for you?
So as a flagship, it probably would be we have a red and a blonde and a stout. Those are our 3 main. I mean, they kind of, as you think about craft brewers, you think of IPAs, you think of a bunch of different kinds of, real funky, fruited sours and maybe some dessert stouts, some kind of stuff like that. We do some of those, but that's not our thing. We're kind of more old school. So I like the traditional, kind of English, Irish, German kind of traditional stuff.
Stouts, lagers, pilsners.
Yep.
Cool. So, I mean, how was it in terms of, okay, you've been homebrewing for a decade or longer, the laws kind of change, and you see that opportunity. What was that process like in terms of how many hoops did you have to jump through in Point Pleasant in order to get the ball rolling and get your spot opened?
Mm-hmm. Well, so there's a couple of different kind of facets of what you just asked about. The kind of getting the ball rolling. My wife and I were really kind of risk averse, and we really just kind of dipped our toe in. I talked to a lot of people. There's a lot of people in the brewing industry that were extremely helpful. We talked to guys down at Pinelands. We talked to Gretchen up at Little Dog. I actually kind of trained with her for a while, learning how she does what she does, and she's been doing this since back in the 80s. Actually, she used to work at Biravino back when it was Basil Teas, and before that she was at Red Bank Brewing, which was actually a homebrew store that they made into a little craft brewery in Red Bank that is long since gone. So she's a home brewer, like a brew master since for 20 some odd 30 years. And so she kind of, and she's advised a lot of people. I could probably name a dozen breweries here on the shore that call her kind of their like their coach, but all the breweries around here, everybody that you talk to, the brewers, the owners, every facet of the business, everybody's wide open about the recipes and how they do it, how they got into it. So that really was just a major part of it, and not just here. I mean, we travel down to Tampa all the time, and that's a huge brewing area and scene, and they're always wide open and very friendly. Boston area, love that. Everything all over the East Coast, we've just been up and down just talking to people, and then we kind of get to the jumping over hurdles and stuff. So the way we kind of did it was, as I said, we kind of dipped our toe in a little bit at a time. we kind of set different points along the way. We said, all right, well, if this works, we kind of like, we'll move to the next step. We got we looked for a place to open up, and we wanted to be right here on Bridge Ave in Point Pleasant. Like I said, we live right off a bridge. I'm walking, everything in Point Pleasant's walking distance, but I'm walking distance from here. We looked at, this was the third or fourth place that we looked at. We were negotiating with each one, and each time we talked to the town council, and the first thing we got was a big thumbs up. They just said, that sounds awesome. We really want you guys to do this. They were really supportive. They gave us kind of preliminary letters. Obviously, it wasn't, until we kind of go through it and find out all the details, we couldn't really get it approved, but they kind of gave us, we talked to them first. We talked to the landowners that are trying to rent, try to negotiate this and that. At each point along the way, even when we signed the lease here, we said, okay, well, we want to have an escape clause. You can keep our deposit if we don't get TTB approval or ABC approval, or if we don't get the SBA loan that we were going to need, so for each one of these, we kind of had a little escape clause. We had a little backup plan. At a certain point, it's just kind of like takes on its own life. You just kind of like figure it out. Every time a hurdle comes up, you just get over it, get around it, dig under it, whatever, run right through it.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of red tape, but I mean, I've never run a business before, so I don't have anything to compare it to. I just know, I work for a big corporation at my day job. So, I'm just kind of used to, sometimes bureaucracy just slows you down, but it doesn't stop you.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that going from being a home brewer and then going commercial, you worked with Gretchen and she helped you along the way. What was the biggest learning curve for you in going from, brewing for parties, then, you got all the machines behind you? What was the biggest learning curve in that process?
That's a good question. And there's a lot of different parts to that. I want to say that the biggest surprise was that there's no big surprise, like brewing on a small scale. When you start doing all grain brewing, so there's a couple of different kind of steps that a lot of home brewers go through. You start out, you might do liquid malt extract, which is basically like a sweet syrup that you add in, you boil it, and then it's just this sugary wort that you can then add hops to, and maybe some specialty grains or whatever, and you've made beer. I mean, you pitch the yeast. The yeast actually makes the beer. You just make this sweet wort, and so you can do it on your kitchen stove, and you're done in a few hours. Next step up from that is all grain brewing, and so then you have to actually extract that sweet wort from the grains themselves, which is you steep it kind of like tea at certain temperatures, and you get different effects from that, whether it's kind of thicker or less thick, whether you're going to extract different things based on the temperature that will help you for the amount of alcohol and the kind of the mouthfeel and consistency, that kind of thing. So once you've done that, which a lot of home brewers kind of get to that stage, brew day is a 7-hour day, and it's got all the same steps as a 50-barrel brew house. It's literally all the same steps. Yeah, it takes a lot more to rake out this mash tun than to just turn a bucket upside down and get rid of the grains. But literally, once you're doing all those steps, I mean, the biggest surprise was, like, I could do that. Like, I don't want to say I'm going to do it as well as Gretchen does, but that's the art part of it. But the actual functionality and kind of working with her, like that's the, and with a lot of the people that I've talked to, it's the biggest surprise is that, I mean, it's not rocket surgery, it's just beer.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of refreshing coming from coaching and health and wellness in the fitness industry, where sometimes, and Jimmy will attest to this too, in martial arts, where sometimes it's like secretive, or it's my way or the highway type of mentality, where the people that we talk to in the beer industry and the brewing, it's like you said, everything's an open book and everyone is welcoming. And you even see now there's a lot of collaborations going on with, like they did the one with All Together, where I think our cousin talked about Tom's River Brewing doing it, but there's even breweries out here that have that recipe and are producing cans. So I just think it's beautiful that it is like an open sharing community. And yeah, when everybody does better, everybody does better. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to make really good beer and put some smiles on some faces.
That's it.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite brew or beer to brew?
Probably for me, it's the stout. We have one that we just call the dark. It's a dry English stout. I did it a lot of times as a home brewer, and a few of the recipes when we scaled them up, we kind of had to do a few tweaks here and there. That one we kind of hit it pretty much right away, and we've done it a bunch of times since we opened. I mean, we just did another batch of it. It's July. A lot of people aren't really into the stouts in the summer, but for me, stout is like milk. I mean, you can drink it in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. It's just, yeah, it's
Yeah,
also, it's kind of got it's very simple as a recipe, and as a, like it's not complex, but it's nuanced. That means, anything.
yeah.
It's kind of layered, and it changes a little bit as the temperature kind of goes up as you're sipping it, drinking it. That's always been my favorite.
Yeah, and stouts coming up, stouts had always kind of been my jam. And then when I got back into beers, this whole IPA thing and New England IPAs is kind of blown up and exploded. And that is kind of what we focused on. And I do really enjoy those. And then what I found was in trying to go back to stouts, it's very hard to find stouts that are, say, below 10% alcohol by volume. And I cannot, I mean, they're more than sippers. I can barely even sip on them. And we recently went to Soulcraft Brewing out here in Salida, Colorado, and they have it's like a 4.8 coconut stout.
Okay.
And I love it. And then I kind of figured out like, oh, I'm not, the IPAs haven't changed my palate per se. It's just the alcohol content that really affects what I like. What is it in brewing a stout that jumps you from, say, a 4.8 to 5% stout, which I find to be really delicious, to those 12 percenters that I feel like I'm drinking a mixed drink?
Yeah.
And feel like it too.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, an imperial version of something, or a really strong beer. Basically, it's all about how much sugar goes in, because that's how much alcohol ends up coming out or being produced, right? So you can make a bigger beer by adding more grains, and you just got to steep it, and then you're feeding the yeast. So the yeast is going to turn all that sugar into alcohol.
All right. And so are you a high percentage guy, or do you prefer that lower?
Yeah, no, we're old school. We're old school, like I said. So our stout is 4.1, which is just about what Guinness is in Ireland. Which is again, you can kind of drink it all day and all night and still drive home, kind of thing. Yeah, most of our beers are in the 4, 5, 6 range. We always try to have one in the 9 or 10. We have one we call the Beta Bridge. It's actually a collaboration. You were mentioning collaboration. There's guys over on the other side of the bridge over here, OTB, over on the beach. They're called Last Wave Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
They're kids. They're my kids' age, but they're doing a great job over there. And they do a bunch of beers, and they do a red ale. So we were at a fest a couple of years ago, coming up on our anniversary, and they had a red. We had a red. We said, let's do a collaboration. We'll make a red. And we literally just piled their red recipe on top of ours and made a 10% or a 9% imperial red. We call it Bay to Bridge. They're on Bay Avenue. We're on Bridge Avenue. So it's Bay to Bridge. We're kind of the roads intersect. And so we keep doing that one. People love it. So that's actually going to be coming out in the next week and a half or so.
Okay.
But yeah, so we have, we try to have one or two strong beers, but generally we're in the 4, 5, 6 range.
Yeah, that seems to be my wheelhouse. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the Tavour app, if you've heard of that.
No.
It's so this is one of the things we've been dealing with here and trying to share beers and stuff, is like you've got to be a bootlegger per se if you're
Mm-hmm.
want to get your friends in New Jersey some of those tasty Colorado beverages.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tavour app is an app that they get beers from all over the country. I've had
Mm-hmm.
beers from Anchorage, and what we did was we thought by signing up for this app we would be able to maybe create some continuity between the beers that we were drinking. And so it's just an app that provides those sorts of beers.
Gotcha.
But I forget where was I going with that, Jim?
I don't know. But when you're trying to figure that out, I got a question for Mike. Is it hard? Is there a certain beer that's harder to make than another? Is it all pretty much the same process the whole way through?
Well, so I mean, all right. So we just hired a brewer, who is a guy who's a home brewer. He's a real good, talented kid. As far as hard, I mean, it's ingredients, honestly. I mean, there's so many places that you can look for ingredients. You can kind of see after you've been doing this for a while, you can see and you know what effects different things are going to have, and you have your own personality, your kind of way of brewing things. So I mean, you may want to strengthen a little bit on the early edition hops to give it a little bit more bitterness, or a little bit more of the late edition hops to give it some aroma but less bitter, not really affect the bitterness so much. There's so many different kinds of hops that can do different things. So I mean, you look at a standard recipe, you look at it, like a chef is going to have, like, there's a base recipe of how to make whatever kind of, like just a regular dish, say like a, I don't know, chicken dish or whatever. They know how to make that, but then they're gonna have their own take on it, right? So I mean, as far as hard recipes, we haven't done any kind of weird exotic styles of beer that that kind of aren't just in the traditional. You mash it, you brew it, you ferment it. That we've done. We did a couple of barrel aged things. Those are always a little bit more complicated because they're going to come out a lot different from when they went in, and in a lot of ways, you really don't know what it's going to do, because that's kind of what the barrel is doing. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's multi-step mashes that are a little bit more complicated. You got to kind of start at one place and then bring it to a different one, and you really want to hit your temps and your times. That's one of the things that you kind of learn early. I said, beer is just beer, but I mean, I'm kind of a geek when it comes to stuff like that. Like, time and temperature are ingredients, and it's kind of real important to hit those. But knowing what you want to do and then just kind of pulling it off it's the same whether it's a real long boil with no additions, or 3, 4, 5 hop additions and something at the end that's an adjunct or something. It's just kind of following the recipe and making sure you're kind of focused, and don't start drinking until after the shift is over. So
I remember where I was going with that. It was all about the ABV, and with the Tavor app and talking about my wheelhouse being that like 4.5 to 6.5 range, I wasn't really paying attention to that. And oftentimes you get roped into the description, or even sometimes, as we joke about, just the can itself kind of ropes you in. And then you get that beer delivered and you look at it and you're like, oh man, this is 12%. This is gonna send me over the edge. And that's where I was going with that. With piggybacking off of what Jimmy said, when you have the recipe and you said you were getting ready to start that Beta Bridge recipe,
mm-hmm.
From the time you pull the recipe and start to when you're canning, what's the time involved in that from start to finish?
Yeah. So we call that grain to glass. For some recipes, it's 2 to 3 weeks. You really I like to let it condition after it's done fermenting for a few days to a week or two. That Beta Bridge is actually a little bit more complicated because it's a higher ABV beer. Our setup is such that I actually have to kind of be careful, and it's hard to push the yeast up that high with the general, like the regular yeast that I use. Some breweries have kind of their own separate stash of yeast that you can condition over time to really be able to handle that high ABV stuff. You can do it with nutrients and some other things and some enzymes to kind of help them out. We're pretty basic here, so it's just like more sugar and kind of give it more time. So the Beta Bridge has been in for a couple of weeks, probably 3 weeks already. The other thing about the stronger and the higher ABV beers, at least for us here, is they tend to take a little bit longer to condition to kind of get that boozy flavor out of it that you're going to get with a 9 or a 10% beer. You don't want to give anybody the face when they bring it up to the lip, get the lip curl kind of thing, So kind of let it mellow out a little bit and then serve it. So it's probably a good month, maybe 5 weeks for that one.
And within that, coming from that batch, how many cans are you getting out of that?
Yeah, that's an unfortunate side effect of the size of the mash tun that I have right here, which is it's scaled to the rest of the system. Had I known what I know now, I probably would have gotten that a little bit bigger than the rest of it scale-wise, so that you can do some bigger beers. When I max that mash tun out, ours is a 4-barrel system, which is about 1,000 pints if you do the full batch done. When I'm going with a stronger, a heavy, like a higher ABV beer, I can't get a full batch out of it because I just can't. But if I kept pulling the sugar till the end of that batch, I would end up lowering the ABV because this just doesn't have as much sugar left at the end. So I actually can only do about a 2/3 of a batch when I'm going to go up that big, like a 9 or a 10% beer. So it's about 3 barrels. So figure 600, 700 pints, something like that. Not accounting for much spillage. But yeah, right in there.
Talking about those batches and 4 barrel batches, what's the cleaning process like with those?
So it's not that bad. I don't know if you can see on the equipment over there, but there's a piece right on the top up here. That's called the clean in place setup. So when you're actually brewing, this piece right here is kind of like a snorkel, and the CO2 goes up through that down into a bucket, and it bubbles. So when you're in the normal, try not to move you around too much and get you all sick on stuff.
You're
But
fine.
when you're brewing, there's no lights on back here. When it's actually fermenting, I don't know if you can see, but right there, it's kind of fermenting into that bucket, and it's generating CO2, right? So the yeast is working in there. This is the blonde, the next batch of our blonde. So right now, what that hose is doing is it's off-gassing from the top and coming down. When you go to clean, you use it in the reverse. You send, you fill the tank with some clean in place liquid. It's acid and water mix. All right. So then it's going to go up and across and then down. There's a spray ball up here, and it's built into it. It's a clean in place ball, CIP, and it spins like a sprinkler. And it's actually in these tanks, it's real nice because it's right at the level where the Croissant kind of like gathers at the side of the tank. So it sprays right on that. It's pretty strong acid. And then you just get in there with a brush. It's actually not too bad. We take all the smaller parts off and we boil them in between batches to make sure that they're absolutely, clean. But yeah, it's actually not too bad.
Thanks for that exclusive look for Airey Brews Radio. I enjoyed seeing the ins and outs of Frye Brewing.
Well, I got one more for you. So we see all the equipment in the back, and I know nothing, and Jimmy knows even less than me. He doesn't even drink. So if you could, even if you're just pointing, you mentioned that the one closest to you is kind of the starting process where the hops or the grains go. Looking at all those pieces of machinery behind you, could you kind of take us through the process maybe and going from
Sure.
canister to canister?
Sure. So actually the first one is this is a hot liquor tank right here. It just holds hot water. It's literally just a hot water tank. They call it liquor on the brew deck. I have no idea why. It's water. Next one is the mash tun. Okay, so typically when I'm getting ready to do it, we have a hopper that we mount up on top of that, and I separate the grains. I set them all out ahead of time, put them in that hopper, and then it drops down into the mash tun and mixes with the water that comes across from the hot liquor tank. It'll mix together and sit in there and steep. Stir it a little bit, and I'd circulate it. The temperature of the incoming water is adjusted in such a way that it's going to hit a certain temperature, right? So it's anywhere from 140, I think 146, 158, 160, right in there. The lower end of the temperature is going to do one thing for you. The top end is going to do something different. Sometimes you do a step mash, so you actually start much lower than that, come up to that, and then go up higher, kind of denature or deactivate the enzymes at the top, 168-ish. So these different steps of the mash will do certain things for different beers. Our Pilsner, we like to do that for the Pilsner malts. We sometimes will do that for the lighter malts. So it'll sit in there for about an hour, basically just extracting. The enzymes will extract all the sugar from the grains, right? So now you got this sweet wort. And then what we'll do is we'll pump that out of the bottom of there and into the next tank over, which is the boil kettle. Okay, once that's full, then we can start cleaning and taking care of all the grains from here. Those are spent grains. We donate them to a farm around here, so they actually a farmer comes and picks them up and feeds them to their cows and pigs. We'll boil in the boil kettle. So transferring that over to there. Once it's in the boil kettle, it'll brew for 60 to 90 minutes right in there. And what we'll do is at the beginning of the boil process, we add some hops, the bittering hops. The ones that you add at the beginning are going to counteract the sweetness of the beer. If you didn't add any hops, a couple of things would be different about beer. One, it'd be a lot sweeter. Two, it wouldn't be as easily preserved, right? So if there's still any residual sugars in there, it wouldn't last very long. It would taste terrible, honestly. It'd just be sweet. So the bittering hops help to preserve it a little bit, but also counteract that sweetness. And they also add a lot of different things, as you know, as an IPA guy. There's different. So West Coast, generally, West Coast IPAs have a lot of early addition and hops that are added during the boil to add different bitterness, but also taste profile to kind of offset some of the sweetness. That's a prominent flavor of the West Coast. East Coast generally lean more on later addition hops, so more aroma We'll do Whirlpool Hops out here. Some people will do like a 0 IBU beer, which means there's no early edition hops at all. They only do late edition hops. And the Whirlpool means that you've already turned off the boil and you're just putting it in there very, very late. This way you get all the aroma and very, very little bitterness. There's a whole science about how to deal with the hops and stuff. The temperature at which you add the hops and the amount of time that it has residual will do different things. There's different kinds of hops. There's pellet hops. You can do whole leaf hops. Some people do cryo hops and different kinds of things later in the process, even than the boil. So 60 to 90 minutes we boil. Then we want to bring that down to room temperature on the way over to one of the fermenters. So we have a wort chiller. It's basically like it's a heat exchanger. It's like a radiator in your car. So you'll use water and also glycol will circulate in one direction in 2 different loops. And then the wort will circulate in the opposite direction through a finned heat exchanger, dropping it down from boiling to 70, 65, depending on what temperature you want to pitch the yeast at on the way into one of the fermenters. Fermenters are temperature controlled because yeast itself generates heat. So as it's fermenting, it's going to try to make it warmer in there, and you want to keep it at that temperature, that sweet spot where they do their best work and where they're comfortable. So you transfer it in there. Now it's really sweet. You take the gravity so that you know how much sugar is actually in there. Pitch the yeast, make the temperature comfortable, and just kind of let it go until it's done. It's going to be a few weeks, sometimes only a few days, sometimes a couple of weeks. We've got a lager in number 1. That's a Pilsner, so that's been in 3.5 or 4 weeks. I think it's going to be another 3. We're going to take it off the yeast and let it condition for a little while after that. So that's a 6-8 week, process. Keep the yeast happy until it's done. Then you take it out of there. You put it into a bright tank, carbonate it, condition it, and it's ready to serve.
So how often are you making brews?
So the answer to that is as often as we can. You see, we got number 1 tank is actually empty right there. I just transferred that this morning before my day job. So, and then tomorrow we're gonna start cleaning that up and getting ready for the next batch. Wednesday is brew day for my brewer Alan. So right now, because we have the lager in number 3, we really can only use 2, and we're trying to use them as often as possible. But we usually brew about once a week, sometimes twice out of every 3 weeks, something like that. 3 out of every 2 weeks, somewhere in there. We definitely need to get some more fermenters, though. Can't brew enough.
And with that that first bin behind you, what did you call that again?
Fermenter number 1.
This first one here with a hop. No, on the other side, other shoulder.
Mash tun?
The mash tun. You had mentioned the temperature.
Mm-hmm.
With a higher temperature versus a lower temperature, like what is the difference in that, and what does that generate?
Yeah, so there's alpha and beta amylase enzymes that kind of have a sweet spot that overlaps at that range, right? So what you want to do is generally you'll get more alcohol but a thinner beer at the lower range. At the higher end of that range, you're going to get a less alcohol, basically a less convertible sugars at the higher range, but it's going to have more mouthfeel, a little bit more, a little bit thicker in consistency.
Okay.
And that's just in that overlap range. There's a protein rest, which is like in the 122, I want to say, range, where you can do different things to kind of convert and take care of get a protein, make a more efficient conversion for different like unmodified malts. Most of the malts are now completely modified, but lighter beers, you're going to want to do that. It'll make them clearer, kind of give you a little bit more a better conversion on that, the lighter grains.
Okay. And with that large scale production you got behind you, what was the trial and error like?
Sorry, I'm laughing because this is like a pilot system for most of the people, even that I talk to. It's like this is like a test batch size.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, coming from the homebrew side of things,
right.
That's a jump. That's a level. Yep. How was it taking your homebrew recipes and then converting that to a larger scale?
Right.
Was there a lot of trial and error in terms of getting the recipes adjusted from homebrew to larger production?
Yeah, not really a lot. I mean, it's not linear for all of the ingredients, but it's pretty close. And I mean, I use software to help me convert it. So it's kind of cheating, but I mean, I'm a tech head. I'm a kind of a geek. So
Smarter, not harder.
I mean, I could try to figure it out, but somebody else already did in a lot of cases. So yeah, it was for most of them. For some of them, kind of like after I scaled it up, there were just different things. I mean, we're using the same water, which is very important. It was huge as a decision process of where to be, and also on the effects of your recipes and stuff. So that was big. I mean, we didn't have to do anything to make a change for that. We're filtering the same way we were there here. So otherwise, yeah. Some of the recipes that I had came from, of course, they came from the homebrew shop, and we might use a different brand of grain. So in scaling up, it might be a slightly different flavor, and so you might want to try to just tweak it a little bit. Like I said, a few of them they just scaled up perfectly, and the rest of them we kind of we play with them. But even I don't even know that all of that is an effect of scaling up, and as it is just kind of like your taste change, other people's taste change. You kind of like every time you do a recipe, you kind of reevaluate: is it perfect? No, it's probably not perfect. What could I do better?
And talking about going from home brewing to commercial, what's the process like for you when it comes to canning? Do you have a company come in and do that for you? Or you do that on your own?
Yeah, so we're not quite at the scale where that even makes sense for us. We just don't have the economy of scale. We had some people talk to us really before, so canning is obviously it's the only way anybody can do anything right now. When we first started and as we were scaling up, we got a little hand canner that we can do small crowlers with. And we do one can at a time. And when we had the company come in and kind of take a look at it, they gave us a price for 4 barrels, but it just wasn't viable. We wouldn't make any money at all. It's not like we're making a lot of money anyway, but the other thing is then we would have 1,000 pints of one kind of beer, but then I mean, we sell a bunch of different beers here. We couldn't, we just couldn't do that for every single one. We don't have the room to store enough cans of that, let alone, then just go and push them out there. What we did is because we wanted to be small and flexible and kind of be able to do the things that we want to do is offer, even though we're only a 4 barrel system, we usually have 10, 12, 14 beers on tap at any time when we were open. So we wanted to be able to can those at least, most of those. We spend a lot of time sending out for getting our labels approved. And then we have a couple of pallets of different sizes of cans. We actually kind of, I think we were the only ones around. I know we're the only ones around here. I don't know if anybody else is doing it. When COVID hit, we started doing 8-ounce crowlers. So we were doing flight cans, a little 4-pack of flight, like a home flight kit.
Small
So we
fries.
were able to, small fries. So we're canning those on our little canning system here. We actually just bought a can filler. We can do it does a couple hundred cans an hour, so that's going to be a lot better than what we had been doing. And the important thing is not just consistency, but the quality. I mean, the way we were filling them is basically like a crowler. So they're good for a few weeks, but I mean, there's a pretty good chance you're getting oxygen in there, no matter how careful you can be with the CO2 in there, purging and trying to cap on foam and everything. There's always going to be a certain amount of oxygen in there. So it's gonna degrade over time under, at our scale and the systems that we had. What we're going to try to do is with the new can filler is to get that quality up and keep the dissolved oxygen down. But yeah, no, we're just doing it by hand, just me and my wife Colleen right now.
And you had mentioned about getting labels approved. So go into that a little bit. And like Richie said before, with the one thing I noticed about the craft beers is the epic logos. I know if I drank, I would just be drinking off the logos. So do you guys have a graphic designer, or is that just all you?
No, so the original logo was done by a kid up the street who works at Blazing Visuals. I'll give him a little shout out. They're right here on
Shout out
Bridge
to
Shout
Alley.
out to
Blazing
Blazing
Visuals.
Visuals.
Yep,
They're
yep.
our
There you
boys.
go. All right. So they got a kid named Murphy who works there. Murph did the original design, and then he actually did all 3 of our designs. And so we've just been riding that ever since. We put that on the same logo that we've got. We don't have a lot of crazy graphic arts for each can or each kind of beer or anything like that. We just kind of do different things with the colors and descriptions. But we love our logo, and I know. I mean, you look at guys like, some of the other breweries out there. I'm thinking of like, Raging Bitch is one that's, everybody knows about. All the ones down there in, North Carolina and Maryland and stuff.
Is that a
All
name
the
of a
IPAs.
brewery?
It's a beer. I'm
Okay.
trying to think of who the brewer is, and I'm drawing a blank here. I was, who does Raging Bitch?
I'll look
The
it up.
graphics, I'm drawing a
looking,
blank. I'm
Rich.
terrible at this. Yeah, you get somebody. Oh man, I can't believe I should get
What
that.
kind of beer is it?
That's an IPA.
Okay.
Yeah, and they do some. Their artwork is great. Their beer is great. The guys around here just do an amazing job. The guys over at Icarus over in Lakewood, they have a lot of really good creative can art. The guys down in Seaside, Last Wave, they have creative artists that do all that stuff, and they love it. Like I said, we're kind of laid back and old school. We got a couple of logos, and we're just kind of going with those.
Flying Dog Brewery.
Flying Dog. Oh, geez,
There you go.
I couldn't think of that. Yeah, Flying Dog has a lot of really good logos.
So, Mike, one of the fun things it's kind of gone in various different ways, but one of the things I love about the cans with the labels, the custom labels and stuff, is I've started making custom coasters.
Okay.
So what I do is I peel the labels off of the cans,
Mm-hmm.
and then I personally, I just upcycle old cardboard. My cousins have taken it a step further, and actually they buy blank coasters off of Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
then
okay.
just cut the labels off. But it's just one of the things that I've been doing here with having too much free time on my hands and trying to put it to some production and do some crafting and creativity. But
Nice.
where do you guys, in terms of the labels and stuff, is there a company that does that? Is Blazing doing that, or how does that go down?
No, you know what? We ended up going with an online company. We were going through Blazing Visuals originally, and they ended up they weren't able to do the I guess they were going to end up farming it out to an online company anyway, because I don't have the actual machine that prints the rolled labels. They were doing it by sheet, and early on that was fine with us. But as we started scaling up, I mean, if you need 1,000 of them, you need it on a roll, and they were going to just farm it out anyway. So we just kind of did that ourselves. But yeah.
And talking before about ingredients and knowing the right ones to choose and what have you, do you have like a one-stop shop where you get all your ingredients, or do you go all over the place to get certain things?
So for our grains, we have one vendor that we've been using. I mean, you always want to kind of have a backup, and we'd love to go local if we could. There's actually a grain, there's a maltster here in New Jersey now that we'd like to be able to use. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to kind of put it together financially, because they are, being local, they're a little bit more expensive, and we would have to convert over a bunch of our recipes to be able to use them, and probably use them and some other people. So because they're kind of smaller. We do use one malt house up in Kingston, New York, or Champlain, New York, for our grains. We get our hops all over the place. We use pellet hops. There are some hop farmers here in New Jersey. There's the Fur Farm up in Colts Neck that we've wanted to use. We actually went to a hop picking day there a couple of years ago, but we weren't in business yet. It was right before we opened up. So we want to try to change some of our recipes over to using the whole leaf hops, dry hop with that stuff from right here in New Jersey. But right now we get our hops just from wherever we can get them. Honestly, I mean, half the time it's Amazon. We're such a small system that I can order them 2 weeks out, and a couple of pounds here, a couple of pounds there. But yeah, it's from all over for the hops. Try to use as many local ingredients as we can where we can.
You got a garden at home?
No, we don't.
No.
I don't have a garden at home. I can't even grow grass, Rich.
Because our buddy Tim and another buddy Randy, they live in Point, and Tim has in the past has grown hops, but I guess one winter it was unseasonably wet, and I guess the hops rotted or something, so he kind of let that fall by the wayside. But for a while he had strings and stuff going up to his to the roof of his house, and he had different strains, and he loved to geek out on that sort of stuff. So I was just curious if you could just be pulling them off and bringing them over and brewing with your own hops from your backyard.
We actually did grow some hops in our backyard for a while. We had a few, I think we had 6 or 8 hop vines, and they get 15, 18, feet high or whatever. Then we found out that they are very poisonous to dogs. And we have a dog, and the people who
Yeah.
live behind us have dogs. And we just, I mean, if a couple of those fell off or a squirrel carried it somewhere, so we just figured that was probably not worth it. But also, I mean, just at the scale, the amount that we would need for, even one batch of this, after off of one hop vine, you might get, I don't know what, a quarter of a pound maybe. We would need several pounds because it's like feathers. I mean, they're so light, but yeah.
You're looking at like 10 pounds going in there or more per batch?
No, in ours, I mean, it's several pounds. I want to say 3, 4, 5 pounds per edition, sometimes like that. But a pound of pellet hops is a lot, doesn't correspond to whole leaf hops. Whole leaf hops don't weigh anything. So I mean, trying to get a pound of whole leaf hops, it might be a bag that's
But you can order pellet hops right off the Amazon and
Yep.
you could be up and running, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
So one question I have on Saturday, we went for a run up in the mountains and we stopped at Outer Range Brewing in Frisco, Colorado. And when we went inside, we actually stopped there to get coffee. They had like a little food court almost set up where they had a chicken place, they had a restaurant. I don't know what it was, and they had a coffee spot, and then they had the brewery, and you could get beers. What is like the legality of stuff like that in New Jersey, such as serving food? Do you need to have like a food truck if you want to have food, or can you serve
Mhm.
food out of there? How's that work?
Right. So the way it works right now is you can serve food with beer if you have a brew pub license. So you can sell what you brew on premises. I think you can sell. You can actually it's a liquor license, so you can sell outside liquor and beer and have a kitchen there. So that's the brew pub. If you're a brewery or a limited brewery, which is what we are, you don't have a license to serve food or manufacture food on premises. So you can't serve it, you can't sell it, you can't have somebody else in to sell it. That's all got to be off premise. They can bring in other stuff from off your premise. So if you're part of there's a food court or a common area or whatever, they can take your beer, they can take somebody else's food. But it's if you're a brewery, we're not allowed to sell food.
Can you have food trucks like say come in your parking lot and serve food?
So it can't be on your property right
Okay.
now, as the law is written right now. But if there's a common area or whatever, like the industrial park model is great for that, because those parking lot spots are common to all of the locations there. So a food truck can just pull in. I personally wouldn't want a food truck out front anyway, because we support all our local places around here, and none of them have a food truck. If they had a food truck, I'd say bring it over. It'd be great. Also, we're on a county road, so for us personally, like, it's kind of complicated. You just can't park a food truck there. But yeah, some places do. If if they're not stepping on anybody else's toes around there, I mean, I think they can do it because it's just common area. But yeah, if it's your property, you're not supposed to have anybody that actually is manufacturing food, or making the food on your property.
And is there a difference in terms of getting the licensing for a brewery versus a brew pub, or is it kind of the same process?
No, it's a totally different process. It's a different kind of pricing schedule and stuff, and you have to have a kitchen that is then like get inspected by the whatever, the health department and everything else. So it's a whole different model. It's not like I could just kind of like get a microwave in here and make it a brew pub.
Right.
It would be.
But I mean, if you have all of the proper channels set up,
Mhm.
are there more hurdles for a brew pub, or is it pretty much the same if you have everything, all your ducks in a line?
I mean, from the ABC standpoint, I imagine it'd be the same. I think it's the same. I never really looked into it. It's not like there's a limit on them or breweries here in New Jersey. Like there are C licenses, like to sell liquor, whether it's a retail or for on premise. Those are limited. It's very difficult to get one, and they're quite expensive here in New Jersey, as you probably know. But but the limited brewery and brewery licenses and brew pubs, I don't think there's any cap on them. It's just up to the governing authority. You give them your money, and if you're okay with the location, you're good.
And I know things have changed. The climate has changed with the COVID lockdown. But before that happened, do you feel that there's any effect on not being able to serve food? Or do you feel like people who come, they want some good craft beer and that's all they're really concerned about?
No, absolutely. We would be able to. It would be a totally different model if we could serve nachos or something that just whatever, anything, literally anything. I mean, it's kind of weird. In the other states, you're required to serve food. When you get your TIPS certification, which is the certification to serve alcohol and kind of proof people and stuff like that. If you the first thing it says on there is that if you are serving alcohol, you should serve food. But in New Jersey, you can't do that. You can't even give away, I mean, you can give away pretzels and chips. It's de minimis snacks is the way it's termed, but you can't sell anything. Yeah, we would definitely do better. I mean, so our whole model is geared towards the tap room right now. We're struggling. We're getting stuff out there. We're keeping our heads above water barely, but we have a tap room model, and we love to have bands in here in the tap room. We can seat about 60 people. We have local bands in. We did before the lockdown, COVID. And it was a great time whenever we had a band in here, and we would love to be able to serve some food and let people just enjoy all night. Just serving them beer and hoping they stick around I mean, it's a little sketchy, honestly. I mean, give them something for in their bellies. They can bring in stuff, which is good. But
They
yeah, it would
just go to
definitely improve things.
Vesuvio's and bring in a cheesesteak or a couple
That's
slices.
Yep. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say
Oh.
all the places in town that they deliver right to your table, so they just bring it right to you. It's kind of walk in with a whatever, a tray or a bag or whatever, and it's like, okay, we got this.
Do you have that a lot?
We did, yeah, all the time.
And
I guess. Go ahead, Jim.
And talking about having that tap room set up, and that's kind of how you guys run your business. How has that changed? How are you guys kind of playing on the fly now with what's going on with the COVID situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the small fry flights was kind of big in the beginning. It's doing all right. It's all canning. It's the only way we can distribute now. We can't fill growlers. We can do now that the restaurants and bars are starting to open up. We're doing kegs again. All our keg account customers are starting to call us up, and we're starting to get stuff out there, which is good. It's all about the canning. It's all retail. So whatever we're selling right here at the door, nobody can come in. So they order it online or they pick it up at the door, or we're selling. We got Gerard's and a bunch of liquor stores around here that are selling our stuff. So that's the only model we can do.
So people can't even come in and fill up growlers or crowlers.
Nope.
Wow.
No, we can't have it. You're not allowed inside the door.
Wow. I didn't realize that was what was going on in New Jersey. It's definitely a bit more open here, or has been a bit more open here, but even in the worst of what we would consider, being locked in or whatever you want to call it, people were still had the ability to have crowlers and growlers filled up. I didn't realize. What is it looking like in terms of opening back up on your end?
I mean, there's no end in sight at this point. All the other breweries, I shouldn't say all of them, as far as I know, all the breweries around here have some kind of outside area where they can. The ABC has been, pretty flexible with that, opening up areas to eat outside, drink outside. If you can do some kind of an area in your parking lot or something, it's got to be contiguous, as I understand it. So you have to be able to do it right from your front door. You have to be able to watch, no passbacks, no, people coming in and getting served that aren't, like it's the same rules as the tap room. But we literally don't have any space for that. So although, a bunch of the other breweries around here have been able to open up at least on a limited basis for that, as well as, the other to-go sales, we haven't been able to. So, so we're just sending out cans at this point.
You can't open up an outdoor seating area in the park across the street?
I would love to. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And so, I mean, what in terms of stages in opening back up, where are you guys? Because you mentioned that restaurants and stuff were opening back up in terms of based on outdoor seating and those sorts of things. Has the governor, does it feel like things are loosening up a little bit, or does it feel like, because here it almost feels like at certain times in certain counties it's almost tightening back up, whereas in other counties it feels like it is opening back up?
Yeah, well, so that and that's the thing is that like people start to see a little bit of daylight and they start to go crazy. So they started opening up the outside bar areas and the and the for the breweries, the outside seating and stuff. We were right on the verge. I want to say July 2nd was the goal. Leading up to, during the course of that week, we were supposed to be able to go to indoor seating and dining, not for breweries, but for restaurants to do, I think, 25% capacity or something like that. And at the last minute, they rolled that back. So it was kind of like we thought we were going to get that part. And then they pulled it back and said, we're not quite ready for that. People aren't really listening to the outdoor seating rules and restrictions. So we can't really move to the next step until people start getting this. Yeah, I feel like we're making progress. It's slow progress. And, there's always going to be people who are going to kind of like, not listen and try to do what they're going to do. And that kind of slows things down.
Yeah, because right now what we have is bars have been open back up, and then the governor shut them back down again. But restaurants are still open, breweries are still open, and what has to take place is when you walk into the place, you have to have a mask on. Your hostess or host brings you to your table, and then you're good to go. And then you can take your mask off. And so, for me, it's almost like, does anyone else kind of see the ridiculousness that I have to wear this thing over my face to walk 10 feet, but once I'm in my pod, so to speak, at my table, I'm good to go. I can go to the bathroom. So yeah, it's just interesting state to state how things are going, and even here, county to county, I'm sure it's probably the same way. Different counties have different openings and closings and restrictions and whatnot. Outside, we just had Roger Steffens on, who is a reggae historian and has the largest Bob Marley collection probably in the world. And one of the things he says is that some of the filmmakers that we've had on is that they don't like to watch films because they don't want to be out influenced. And we've had comedians on that say the same thing, is they don't necessarily watch comedy because they don't want to be influenced or maybe use someone's bit or something like that. Do you drink other beers?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I figured you were going to say.
That would be absurd.
See, that's the thing. Some people don't want to be influenced, where I think as a beer brewer, you might want to drink other beers so that you can be influenced, because it goes back to, what we said, the beer community is very open. So I guess my question would be within New Jersey and outside of New Jersey, what are your go-to breweries, beers outside of, Frye Brewing?
Oh, geez. So, I mean, interesting that you said that, because outside New Jersey right now, I'm just loving this post shift. This is from Jack's Abbey. Okay. They are up in, oh, geez, I always get these confused. What? Framingham, Mass. Okay. This is an amazing Pilsner. I've been loving these. So outside
What's the
here.
alcohol percentage on that?
It's only like a 4 point. Hold on. Give me a minute. 4.7.
Right.
Okay.
So they call it post shift. The little logo up at the top, or the little comment, says there will be no working during drinking hours. So it's for after you're done with your shift, and here you go, right? So I mean, I love lagers. I love traditional styles. Anytime somebody here in New Jersey pulls off a lager, a Pilsner or something, I know that Last Wave just came out with the Pilsner. They do a Goza, which I love a lot. Icarus does a couple of Pilsners a year. So before, when you asked me what was my favorite beer, like people always ask me that, and it's kind of like picking your favorite kid. It's like, right now, this is, I mean,
they're all listening, Mike.
I know. Probably not. And the answer is Ray. No, wait, Aaron. No, Catherine. No, wait. It's
No comment.
Nope. I'm gonna. But it really is about like what you're doing and what you like, where it fits in, and who you're with and everything else. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, and that's why beer is amazing. Is to me anyway. I mean, and I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people who get into wine, and I'm like, I'll get into wine when I've had all the beer. like when and there's so many beers out there that, I mean, it's just the gamut, I mean, from a little 3.0 beer that's, like just really, really nuanced, and just like you can try to pick out all the complications and the complexity of the malt, to some really hoppy stuff to try to figure out, like what's, like checking out the balance of the early to late edition hops, and which hops, and the floral notes, and the different fruity notes that you get from them. I don't have a favorite, honestly. Like, it's just this is what I'm getting into right now from out of state. In state, there's so many different breweries that are opening up all the time that I honestly haven't even had all of the beers. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could say you could. Definitely, there's less than 150 of them right now. So I mean, I definitely could, but still trying to check out all the new ones and all the local ones.
Yeah, and it seems within, I'd say, probably the last 10 years, when I first left New Jersey and moved to San Diego, the good folks of America's finest city would like to tout themselves as, the craft beer mecca of the United States. But at the same time, you had the people up in Portland that were clapping back and saying, no, Portland is the craft beer capital of the United States. But then you also have Asheville, North Carolina, where you have like the big brands like Sierra Nevada and a couple of the other ones that have opened up distribution in there. And now it's almost to the point where, I would say probably maybe not every city, in Colorado or New Jersey, but definitely every county in New Jersey or Colorado or anywhere in the United States probably has a brewery of some sort. And so, like you said, there's not enough time and there's not enough money that you could take in all of the greatness that is beers. And that's another thing I like about the Devore app, is that it because of such an explosion, whereas maybe before you could get beers from different parts of the country, whereas now, because there are so many great breweries here in Colorado or New Jersey, it's tough to go into a liquor store and find some of the things that you guys might get on the East Coast, because they're just bringing in local distribution. So it's I mean, you could literally probably spend the next 10 years driving around in a Winnebago and still not, by the time you got to California and started heading your way back, there would be hundreds more that have opened up and have been successful. And they're all got their own unique recipes and are doing some crazy, funky things. And I mean, I've seen things where they're using Fruity Pebbles at some point in the process, and marshmallows, and have you guys done anything crazy like that?
No.
As a brewer, does that sort of stuff frustrate you? Or do you
never
appreciate it?
You never want to say never. I don't know that I appreciate it all that much, but honestly, I'm still trying to get on board with like the sour beers. I mean, I can understand like the kind of like traditional farmhouse, but there's other ways of doing it and other ways that people are doing it and other ways we're doing it. I mean, we can't do wild beers. We can't. That's the thing, is that one of the things about doing beers of different styles is you use a different kind of yeast, and some of those wild beer yeasts can infect your whole system. Like they just you can't kill them off, right? So that's every beer that you make from then on is going to be a wild beer. So you just can't turn that loose in your brew house. So there's different ways of doing that. The different wild, the Fruity Pebbles and the fruits and the all that, I want to say non-traditional stuff. I don't want to say never, because like I said, we've done sours now. I mean, I've got several customers that want us to do a hard seltzer, Sam, and so I know you're out there, but so I never want to say never. It's not, it's kind of technically that's a malt beverage, and then you got flavored malt beverages technically as opposed to beer, and that's how you kind of have to market them and stuff. But I mean, it's a beverage, it's a drink, right? I mean, it's whatever you like.
Yeah, as long as it brings us together, we can have
right?
a peaceful, loving, happy conversation about something is refreshing in itself. Yeah, we're talking about like the funkiness of things, and what I just cracked open. This has kind of been my new jam lately. It's again from that Soul Craft Brewing I was talking about, but it's a green chili ale.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so it's a blonde ale brewed with roasted poblanos and serrano chilies. And so, one of the things Colorado is known for in terms of culinary arts and things like that is green chili. And so this is taking that and using that and putting it into a beer. I love it. Probably I don't want to say alone in this, but there's something about that heat of the chilies as you're drinking something cold and cool, that contrast. I don't know. This has just been my new favorite beer here. I hadn't had it in probably about a year, and Jimmy and I just went down there and picked up and rehad it. So I do enjoy that. The other thing was you mentioned sours, and I feel like sours is one of those things more than maybe any other beer that people either love or they hate. There's no middle ground, at least in my experiences, or the people that I've talked with.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's just it's the can and the description of it, it sounds very delicious. But then when you in fact open it and drink it, I find that they are way more sour than my liking.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, you talk to people, and I feel like I feel like it takes a more developed palate than I have right now, and maybe it's just it's just me. I enjoy some mildly sour. So there's it's on the pH scale, right? So it's like 3.8, 4, 4.2, right in there. I like those when they start getting down into the really acidic 3.2, 3.1, like total pucker, like your cheeks start tightening it up and stuff. For me, that's not as refreshing as something that's like a 3.8, like a lemonade, kind of like like a punchiness or sour. But it's all about taste, right? And so you got your. I feel like the sours are, it's a gateway or a transition for people who are used to wines. Kind of will sometimes like a sour beer, as opposed to like just a more, definitely the more bitter or the sweeter, like a more malty kind of beer. A wine drinker in general is not going to like that. But I mean, it's all on the spectrum somewhere, right? So, and my tastes have changed in that, and I feel like they kind of will continue, just like kind of everybody's will.
That's interesting. Thank you for shedding that light on me, because I didn't have any insight into that. Do they list the pH on the cans like they do with ABV, or is that just something?
I don't think I've seen that. I've tested some just because I'm curious of where my sweet spot is. There's some that, from Dogfish Head. I'm terrible with names. But they do a couple of sours that I think are right in the 3.8 range, that I feel like is a really nice mild tartness, as opposed to, as it starts to drop down into some of the ones that you'll get elsewhere. I'll see like a 3.1, 3.2, and it's overpowering, and to me it becomes so front and center that nothing else is there. It's just not a beer to me anymore. But it's my personal taste, but yeah, that's the measurement for that.
Well, it's interesting too, you say that it's kind of like a good transition beer for maybe people that are more wine drinkers, because we did an episode not too far back with the cousins, and we kind of honed in a little bit on sours. And the one that I had was almost exactly what I said, was like, I almost feel like I'm drinking wine here, and I'm not a wine drinker at all. I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I've drinking wine in my life, because I just don't enjoy it. The thing is with the sours is you see the ingredients or what they're cooking and what they're using, and my mind always goes to, this would be like a great like summer shandy or a Radler, and then I crack it open and then I get that it's like a wine, and I'm so disappointed. I'm really regretting spending $20 on a 4-pack.
Right, now I got 3 more of these. What am I going to do with them?
Yeah. Sending them off to the cousins so they can enjoy them.
So, talking about different types of beers, have you ever brewed a gluten-free beer?
I have not. So I started looking into that because we do have some customers who either have celiac or have dietary requests or conditions. And the research that I found is I could do a gluten reduced beer, but you really can't even use the same equipment that you use for anything that has gluten in it. Technically, it still would, like, you get just the boiling and even the cleaning process won't do anything about that. There's a brewery in Hoboken called Departed Souls.
Yeah.
They so you're familiar with them?
Mhm.
They have two separate systems that they never even combine any of the hoses or gaskets or anything in order to do their gluten-free beers. And they have won awards from the time they were home brewers all the way up to, and now. And they actually did a gluten-free version of the altogether beer that you were talking about earlier. They kind of reconfigured the recipe so that they could do a gluten-free version of it. But yeah, no, I'm very interested in that. It's just unfortunately because of the limitations we have, we could brew without gluten, but it wouldn't be gluten free.
Can you notice the difference in the taste when it's gluten and gluten free?
Honestly, I mean, I think from most brewers you can. I think you
Yeah.
could. I think you have to use sorghum and some other things instead of barley and wheat. But yeah, I haven't done any experiment. Like I don't have any experience in that. So.
All right. And one other question I have for you is, what advice would you give from someone who's a home brewer who may be thinking about opening up a brewery? What would you kind of say to them? Would you deter them? Would you encourage them? What words of wisdom would you give them?
Uh, Thinking about opening a brewery. I mean, geez, that's differently phrased than anything I've considered in the past. I mean, people say, a lot of different questions, but for that, I mean, follow your passion, right? So, I mean, like I've always done this. I'm still doing my day job. I mean, this isn't paying my bills. I would love for it to someday, and maybe when we come back out of this thing, I'll be in a position where that'll be the case. Um, but follow your passion, go for it, right? I mean, get the experience, talk to a bunch of other brewers, learn what you're doing, and take copious notes. I always say just go for it, right?
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you've never been a business owner. This is kind of your first endeavor into, I don't want to say maybe following your passion, but like having a passion project and owning your own business. What is your favorite aspect of owning a brewery, and what is your least favorite aspect of owning a brewery?
Uh, there are two sides of the same coin right there. So we, Colleen. I mean, Colleen and I, we've always had parties at the house where bands came in and played. I mean, we don't have a big house, but you can fit a band if you try hard enough, right? So we just love entertaining and drinking beer and having friends in and stuff, right? So my favorite part of it is having bands in here, people that I either don't know very well or have never been in the place before, and they come in and they just have a rocking good time, and they're drinking our beer, and they're talking to all our neighbors and our friends, and they're rocking out to whatever local band we have in here. We know all the bands that we have in here. We're close friends with them. They're great people. That's the best part. That is the best part. And that the beer is part of that. And then they go out of here and they'll go get it at the liquor store, or they'll talk about it with their friends and stuff. Um, Least favorite is so we touched on it earlier, and it's those parties and stuff, but knowing that like we can't serve food. Like I have people in here, this is like our living room, and I can't offer them like something to eat while they're having their beer and stuff like that. I mean, the restrictions and the laws and the limitations and stuff, which I mean, I'm sure every business owner, that's their biggest beef is, why you got to tell me how to run my business. I just want to run my business, kind of thing. That's probably the hardest is trying, first of all, understanding all the laws, because there's a lot. I pay taxes to 4 different organizations, I think, and knowing how to sort that all out. I mean, most of it's our accountants, kind of problem, but I mean, I have to give the information to them, and just the following all the restrictions and stuff like that. Right now, before COVID, kind of all this stuff, the tap room rules involved the number and size of televisions I was allowed to have in my tap room. Like,
Really?
how does that have anything to do with the ABC or literally anything else? Like, if I was a coffee shop, I could have 15 TVs on the wall. Nobody'd care. Like, but we're a brewery, and so of course we can only have a certain number of TVs, and they can only be a certain number of measurement, corner to corner. Like, how is that even part of this? You just don't even see any of that stuff walking in. I mean, we signed up for it. We said, okay, the ABC is going to be able to tell us, and the TTB and whatever.
Is
That
that
kind
just
of
a
thing
New
is
Jersey
just
thing?
it's a New Jersey thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what's the biggest size TV you can have?
It's like 50 something inches, maybe 60 inches, I think, diagonally.
And how many can you have?
3, I think
Three.
3. Yeah.
And did they give you a reason? Is there a reasoning behind the limitation?
So one of the rules that they put in place when they first allowed tap rooms to sell breweries to sell beer in their tap room was they had to make some concessions. They don't say this overtly, and I don't know who's going to be listening to this podcast. Hopefully, I don't step on my toes. But they had to make some concessions to the people who pay $500,000 for a liquor license. I mean, and also, I mean, hey, they're our customers. I want to keep them happy too. They're our friends. I know a lot of them. But in order to not compete with them, the brewery tap rooms had to be an educational experience. They couldn't be like a bar. They just don't want it to be a sports bar, right, here in New Jersey. And so anything that makes it kind of emulate a sports bar, we get pushback.
So talking about not wanting to compete with sports bars and whatnot, but I think you said you had some TVs. Do you get an uptick during football season and whatnot?
We don't have any TVs actually.
Oh, none?
Some breweries do. I've heard of some friends that have like the NFL ticket and stuff like that, and we don't. I don't want any of that. I honestly don't want to be a sports bar. I wouldn't mind being a bar like where people could throw darts, but we love talking to our customers, and I don't want people yelling over my shoulder at the TV when whatever Pennsylvania team is doing well, because nobody wants that. But we have the menu board and that's it. We don't have any TVs. We don't broadcast anything here. And
you got a record player?
We have music in here. Yeah, we do not have a record player. We should do some vinyl stuff, right?
Yeah.
We definitely should. No, we play some good music in here though, and the bands that play in here are amazing.
Cool.
Speaking of that menu bar, someone comes in, maybe not a local or maybe not versed in beers. They ask you, what's your go-to beer of choice that you serve? What is it?
I mean, we do a lot of seasonal stuff. Okay. So, I mean, it really depends on, my answer to that is always, what do you like? Or, like what kinds of beers do you drink? Because we have a pretty wide variety. Because for a small brewery, we always have 12, 14 beers on tap. So the answer to that is always another question. What is it you're up for? Because we've found a formula that kind of works for us. We have one high ABV beer. We usually have 2 or 3 IPAs, although when we first started, we weren't really into IPAs, but give the people what they want, right? So 2 or 3 IPAs of a different, like we'll have a black IPA, New England IPA, maybe like or dry IPA. We'll have a couple of traditional European beers, usually one lager. So it's really we try to, you can't, there's hundreds of beer styles themselves, but we try to have a variety. And then we have 1 or 2 seasonals. So whatever we've got, like that's just kind of like, top. Right now, we just killed our May Day lager. It's a Maibach that we come out with in the spring of every year, which is traditional lager. And then we're doing the Pilsner right now. We wanted to have that out before we were at a May Day, but lagers are our lagers. They just take a while. We'll be doing our Oktoberfest in a little while. We have a honey wheat for the summer. So, there's a formula, and it includes seasonals.
I got a couple things to go back on, some stuff to touch on. You mentioned, you and Colleen like to just have parties and entertain, live music, and what's a party and live music and entertainment if you can't have snacks? Is there a limitation as to what snacks you can offer? Like, can you go to Vesuvio's and order like 15 pies and then bring them over and give pizza away? Or is it just peanuts and chips and pretzels?
Yeah, we do pretzels and chips. That's pretty much it. Some goldfish for the kids or whatever. I shouldn't say kids. A lot of the grown-ups like the goldfish.
Yeah, I love goldfish.
Yeah. But it's de minimis snacks, which is it's Latin for like not enough to actually get you by, I think, something like that. So.
All right. I will say I will take Cheez-Its over a goldfish, but I'm not going to turn down a goldfish.
Yep.
The other thing was you mentioned kegs. Are those going to individuals with kegerators at their houses, or are you distributing kegs to local restaurants, bars, that sort of stuff?
All of the above. We have them for retail and wholesale. Yep.
Awesome. And then last other thing you mentioned, I wrote down, what the heck is a black IPA? Because I don't even think I've ever seen that. And I just saw a golden stout. if you could touch on that too, because I got one of those coming. I've never heard of a black IPA or seen a golden stout. So drop some knowledge on us.
Okay, well, I mean, a black IPA, it's an IPA, but it's brewed with darker malts, so it's gonna have to it's generally gonna have more of the early edition hops. It's gonna have enough bitterness to counteract or kind of, I don't want to say overpower, but make itself prominent in spite of the bitterness that you're going to get from the darker malts. So darker malts are going to give you that a little bit of coffee bitterness, right? And so you're going to want a little bit of hops that are going to stand up to that, and then enough kind of late addition to give you a little bit of aroma, right? So so our black IPA that we have right now, it's called Cafe, because when we came out with it, it was actually during the 2016 elections, and there was some kind of a weird tweet that from our current president where he made up a new word. So it's the Cafe Black IPA. It was actually the first beer that my son and I brewed. Obviously, it wasn't wasn't called that way back. We did a black IPA just because we were just throwing all the ingredients we had in there. We just wanted to try and make something really strong. I think it's 8.3%, and it's got some Simcoe hops in it, some early edition stuff. So it's bitter. It's pretty popular, but yeah, it's kind of a niche IPA, definitely.
Does it look like a stout?
It does.
Okay.
Looks like a stout. Yep.
Okay. And then so on the flip side of that, what the heck is a golden stout? And what should I be expecting?
Well, a golden stout, I think that's the term that they're using for the stout that tastes like a stout, but it's golden. It looks like a pale ale or whatever, but they somehow, I have never brewed one, but yeah, somehow they're putting in enough of the, I don't think it's the dark malts, but they're getting in the coffee, that coffee flavor and the early, the kind of the tannins that you get from like a coffee or a dark malt, black IPA, black malts.
Have you ever had one?
I actually haven't. I've had a bunch of people tell me about them, and nobody around here makes one. So, I mean, I actually haven't had one.
Okay. Yeah, I forget where it's coming from, but maybe North Carolina. But
that sounds right. There's a couple of breweries down there that make them. That a bunch of my friends actually. I've got a. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, it's called Naughty Sauce, and I think it's from a brewery in Charlotte.
All right.
But yeah, I just saw it, and
Naughty
like
sauce.
I said, I'm into stouts, and so I figured, why the heck not give it a whirl?
Sure. Yeah. No, I got a connection. One of our former employees now lives in Charlotte, so I'll have to see if I can get her to hook us up.
Yeah. Let me Jimmy, if you got a question, go ahead and fire away, and I'll look for this.
Mike, do you have a daily practice or daily ritual you do to get your day going?
No, I mean, I'm up early. I'm usually like I'm up at 5 something or whatever. But yeah, no, I don't run every day. I don't bike every day. I just whatever. I usually run like twice a week whenever I can squeeze it in. But yeah, no, just I'm either here cleaning stuff or at 5 whatever, or swimming in the ocean. I get one part of the Tri Club over here.
Oh, nice.
Or running. Go for a walk with the wife, whatever. I log into my day job at 8:00, and I'm usually 2 hours into my day. So whatever I can squeeze in before that, I do.
Are you a coffee drinker?
I am.
How do you take your coffee, and how do you brew your coffee?
Oh, that's a strange question. I'm gonna sound like a girly man here.
Well,
but
before you say that, Jimmy forgot to mention that we have rapid fire questions that we ask all of our guests, and he is now transitioned into that segment. So it may have seemed like a random question coming from all this brew talk, but we are as we are beer snobs, we're also coffee snobs, and so we like to get a little footprint from our guests in terms of no judgment, of course, but we like to hear about how our guests like to take their caffeine in the morning.
Well, probably no surprise to you. I'm just as likely to drink beer before my breakfast as coffee. When I'm over here, I'm tasting whatever, I'm here. But yeah, no, I'm going to sound like a girly man, but I like flavored cream in my coffee.
All right.
Okay.
It's my guy. It's my thing. That's it.
And are you doing drip?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
And this is Richie's rapid fire question, but since he's looking, I'll ask him.
I got it.
All right.
It's actually from Anaheim, California, so nowhere near North Carolina, but it is called Noble Air Works out of Anaheim. It's a golden stout called Naughty Sauce, and it is a 5.4 ABV.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I know there are a few breweries down in the Virginia and North Carolina area that make those. I don't think there's any in New Jersey that I've heard of that make a golden stout, but I will definitely look out for them. I'm interested. I'm curious.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
We mentioned live music several times here on this episode. Mike, what are you currently listening to? What's your go-to good vibes jams? And then also, if you have any podcast, audiobooks, or are currently reading anything, what do you got?
Always love reggae in the tap room. It just relaxes me. I love some reggae. We have a couple of local bands. Dub Proof is a reggae dub band that plays here, and we have a couple of albums out, and we listen to those here in the tap room whenever they're not playing here. But a bunch of other guys around here. Any kind of I'm all over the place with like on Brew Day. I'll be in here. I'll be listening to anything from like actually one of the guys from Last Wave just mentioned G Love. Listen to a bunch of ska, all kinds of stuff in here. Old surf guitar.
Like some Dick Dale?
Yeah, I love the Dick Dale. I was so sad when he just passed, and I just missed
Really?
him because he had played here on the shore. He just played up in Seabright, and then he died like 6 months later, and I missed him that trip that he was through, and he just passed. Yeah, it was some Dick Dale, some Ventures, all that old school stuff. Yeah. You ever hear the
Any
Beat
podcasts
Farmers?
or audiobooks?
I got a Beat Farmers station on my Pandora from back in the
Okay.
80s. That's probably before your time. Podcasts, I'm all over the place with that. There's a bunch of beer podcasts. There's let me see. Steal This Beer is actually Augie Carton and John Hall. They do a weekly podcast, which I think is amazing. What they do is they drink out of black glasses, and they drink the beer, and they don't have any pretense about it. They don't know what the beer is. It comes in from their guest. They have a guest brewer in from wherever, and then they talk about it, and like I said, no pretense, no idea of like how much it costs or what they wanted it to be or what it should be. It's just about what it is, right? They're both what I would call super tasters. I love that. I'm not that. I'm still kind of working on my palate. I understand beer and flavors, but I'm I don't have the vocabulary that those guys do. Augie came from like a wine tasting thing, and John Hall is a beer writer for I think Beer and Brewing magazine, and or he has in the past. He's got his own thing now. So I listen to a lot of that stuff. Science stuff. I'm kind of a geek, so
It's all right. We're all geeks. We just geek out on different things sometimes.
that's it. Yep.
Are you into Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yes, I am.
Star Talk Radio?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Star Talk.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. And then as Jimmy was getting into, one of the things we dig into here, for better or worse, is we touch on the conspiracy talk. So if there is anything that you get down with, do you have a favorite conspiracy theory?
No, I don't. I'm just totally. I don't know. I'm pretty laid back about that stuff. I mean, everybody's kind of got their own thing, and whatever you're into is what you're into. I'm just all about like what I can see in front of me. So I don't really kind of.
But you got a lot in front of you. So I mean, we got a full-time job, we got a business, we got kids, we got grandkids. There's a lot in front of you, so that is understandable, and I appreciate that. Mike, is there anything that we haven't covered or touched on that you would like the good folks and followers of Airey Bros Radio to know about?
Yeah, be kind to each other. Just all be good. Just be good. Like, relax, man. It's not that bad.
Yeah, one of our other guests and one of our good friends is a professor, and he always says rule number one is just be cool.
There you go.
And if we could all just abide by that, we'd all probably get along a little bit better. And the guest that we had on last week is like I said, is a Bob Marley historian, and we had mentioned several times in the past 2 weeks if we could just like have that say anything moment where we're just standing and walking around with, Bob Marley blasting, 24/7, that, like
Right?
eventually people are either going to get so sick of it that they're going to be happy, or they're just going to start nodding their head from the beginning. And I think
Yeah.
we could all benefit from a little bit of positive vibrations and Three Little Birds and whatever else is your favorite Bob Marley song or reggae song for sure. Jimmy, you got anything else?
Mike, thanks for the education. I appreciate it. Like Richie said, I am not a beer drinker, but I can get down with the science of it and just the knowledge. There's so much knowledge when it comes to craft beer. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you hipping the fans of Airey Bros Radio so they have a little bit more craft beer knowledge. And I think it is awesome what you're doing. So just keep it up and keep on keeping on, my man. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And Rich, one last thing I do want to say, and I mentioned this one time. I don't know what the occasion was. I know somebody was honoring you for something. I credit you in no small part for me jumping into this. Honestly, I mean, knowing you, you're a beast, man. You're just a beast. And knowing you from coaching our kids and stuff, and just like you're all positive. You're just all positive, all about just go for it. I love that.
Well, thank you. I always like to tell people I'm just a guy from New Jersey with some tattoos and a beard, and just trying to live my life and be happy and find happiness and spread positivity. And so I'm honored and I'm humbled, and I appreciate your kind words. If I were to send my mom over to pick up some beers, what's available right now?
Oh, let me see. We got the amber ale, we got the milk stout, the coffee stout, amber apple pie. I think we got one or two of the Mayday left. Like I said, we're just about out of that. The Gunner's Ditch, Black IPA. I think that's about it right now. Maybe some more.
Okay. How's that apple pie?
It's pretty popular. It's really popular. We
All
tried to
right.
cut it off in May, and there was like an uprising here in Point Pleasant. So we just keep it going all year long.
All right. And is that available just in small fries or?
No, we got it in the four pack of the pints.
Okay. And with the current situation, everything you got going on, what are your hours like right now?
Really, it's pretty thin. So Thursday, Friday, we're just 3 to 7. Saturday, actually, I think it's 3 to 7 right now, but I think we're going to extend those to 1 to 7, and then Sunday is just 1 to 3.
Okay, cool. You heard that, folks. If you're in Point Pleasant and you're listening, go over and support Frye Brewing. Get some small fries, some big fries. Show them the love. Tell them that the Airey Bros sent you. Mike, it's been an honor and a pleasure. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your kind words. And as soon as we are back to somewhat of some normalcy and we can get back to some traveling, I had a bunch of trips in the spring planned for Boston Marathon and some other events that unfortunately got curtailed and curbed and wasn't able to get back. But when I do get back to Point Pleasant, I am going to bring a crew. And we are going to stop in and say hi and have some beers and listen to some reggae.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike, very much. We really appreciate your time. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And again, thank you for your insight, your education, and just having a great conversation.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good one.
All right.